This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever in the world you are joining from. I welcome you to this day 7 and the last day of our virtual finance transformation summit. First of all, I hope all of you are in the best of your health and staying safe. And I'm highly thankful to all of those audience who are with us from the day 1. So we are now almost reaching to the close and end of our summit. And this was actually, you can treat it as a like 1 week learning and development journey, which we have started on 16th of April. And we have almost covered variety of topics and relating to even current situation of COVID-19 pandemic and what role finance professionals should play and how they can support their organization being at the forefront to navigate through these turbulent times and unprecedented challenges. So just before starting today's session, as you can see on your screen, this is today's the last session of day 7, and it's on the robotic process automation, RPA and FP&A, where is the value, which is going to be presented by Brian Kalish. He has already joined us from Washington, DC, USA. Brian, he's associated with us for last almost couple of years, almost 3 years. We have done lots of summits and conferences with him in Dubai, and we have already did lots of webinars as well on FP&A. He is a globally renowned speaker and FP&A thought leader in the USA, and he did conference and virtual conference and summits almost all around the globe. So I hope you will learn a lot from him, from his experience, from his decades of experience and his expertise in the field of emerging technology and FP&A and how we can leverage FP&A and emerging technology within FP&A and the finance function. So those of you who have joined today, as you can see on your screen, this is our vision and mission at HOFT, Hub of Finance Transformation, the organizer of this summit. And this summit is the first step towards reaching our vision and mission, where our vision is to serve the global community of accounting and finance professionals who aspire to transform themselves into the role of business partners or strategic advisors and who want to elevate in their corporate ladders. So this is a platform for them, and we have already started this journey to accomplish and to achieve our vision and mission. Regarding our framework, as you can see, as I already explained before, as we promised before and at the start of summit, that we are going to cover almost all these 6 pillars of our strategic finance leadership framework. And as you can see, and I will just go through the agenda, just to quickly go through the entire summit, you will see we have covered each and every pillar. We have covered financial leadership, that includes financial analysis and finance business partnering, that includes strategic leadership as well. And we have covered personal and strategic leadership during my session in personal resilience and strategic resilience. And we have covered public leadership part as well during our session with Zaid Kalia on communication, storytelling, and public speaking skills. And with Ashit, we have covered operational leadership part as well. And we have covered on the supply chain, and then also on the business partnering by Andy and Andrew. So we have covered almost each of these pillars. We have touched almost, we have give you all the flavors from this leadership framework. And during last 3 sessions, we are focusing on the technology side, as we mentioned, on the technology leadership. And today in our last session also, we are focusing on one of the emerging technology, that is RPA, robotic process automation. So I will quickly take you through the agenda. This was our agenda. So we have already covered our all 8 sessions, and now we are today at the day last, on the day 7 of our summit, and we are going to close our summit. But of course, this is not the end. This is the last day, but not the least. We have lots of initiatives and lots of projects under pipeline that we are planning along with my co-host Mohammed Al Ruby. He will be addressing you at the end of the session on the closing of summit. And we have lots of ideas, lots of innovative ideas and projects and initiatives we are going to take to support our global community of accounting and finance profession. And of course, that we cannot do alone. We have partnered with such globally renowned and world-class speakers and experts who are experts in the field of business partnering, analysis, and finance business partnering, on finance transformation, emerging technologies. So, and even from communication and public speaking, as you can see, Zaid Kalia, he's the second place winner of International Video Speech Concert of International Toastmaster. So he is expert in the public leadership on the communication side. Then Robert, he is expert in the technology side. So we have collaborated with such a renowned and very highly expert speakers from different countries, including UK, USA, Middle East, Asia region. So of course, this one of our value as well, that we always collaborate with the experts, and our vision is to support the global community of accounting and finance professionals. So today we are going to talk about RPA, robotic process automation. So now soon I will release my controls and give the presentation controls to Brian Kalish. He will be talking on the robotic process automation. As you know, the finance business partnering role is being emerged for the last couple of years, and during this time of COVID-19 and pandemic, we are going through such challenges that finance professionals are facing, and of course they are at the forefront of safeguarding, managing, advising their businesses. So of course they have to first free themselves from the routine and repetitive tasks and from the traditional accounting and finance work. That then only they can act as their business partner for the non-finance business function. If they are involved in the day-to-day transactional work, routine work, and playing with their mega spreadsheets, so of course their significant portion of their time will only be spent there only. So today we are going to cover one of the emerging technology, that is robotic process automation. And I hope you will find it very useful, as Brian, he has such expertise in this field, and he has also worked, and he has his own consultancy as well by the name of Kalish Consultancy, based in Washington, DC. So he has lots of practical experience of course serving lots of clients across the United States. So now, without wasting further time, I will just release control and give the session to Brian. Brian, are you with us?
I am here. If you can hear me, how do I sound?
Yeah, exactly. You sound very energetic and perfect. Okay. Just give me a minute. I will give the presentation controls to you so you can share your screen. Okay. Yes, Brian.
Good. So hopefully everybody, I use Mohammed as my, you can hear me and you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can.
Great.
Okay.
Well, first of all, Mohammed, thank you so very much, for all the work that you've done over the past week. I guess first and foremost, welcome. My name is Brian Kalish. I'm here in Washington, D.C., USA. First and foremost, I hope everyone is doing as well as possible in our current situation. Hopefully, to inspire you a little bit, please remember, we shall persevere, and together we're going to overcome all these challenges we're facing. But I want to congratulate you all, because it's still very important to continue to educate ourselves and stay connected at this time, as well as going forward. When Mohammed asked me to talk about RPA, a little while ago, I had no idea, we'd be in the current situation that we're in. The premium, I think, on automation has really been highlighted. One of the things, if we take the human element out of the current pandemic that we're working with, is it's highlighted a lot of strengths and weaknesses that organizations have. The fact that we've basically gone completely remote in a very short period of time. I think so. Congratulations to most businesses. I mean, we've been through a few challenges over the last 20 years, whether it was Y2K, whether it was the financial crisis. But as I tell a lot of people, we're very thankful for the internet. We're also very thankful that the cloud really came into existence about 10 years ago, because you can think about all the challenges we would be facing today if we were dealing with on-premise systems. So, I think it's very timely. I think again, congratulations to Mohammed and team. I think it's been a great weeks of content. I think we'll see more and more of that. In my little world, we're doing virtual roundtables and we're doing webinars. So, I mean, obviously everyone has kind of ramped up because we can't do face-to-face. I'm very optimistic. I'm scheduled to be in Dubai in October. So I'm optimistic that I'll be able to take the trip. I'm supposed to be in Saudi Arabia in July. That might be a little tough, and Bahrain in August. I'm hopeful. I'm very fortunate I get to travel the world and work with hundreds of companies. So hopefully what I can do today is share kind of what I'm kind of seeing, what's going on with RPA, and a little bit of what's going on with artificial intelligence. But please feel free to ask your questions, because it's more important to address things that you're thinking about rather than what I think you want to talk about. So kind of to kick things off. Okay. I'm asked to speak to a number of different organizations. I love the concept of the summit, which is finance transformation, and obviously technology is a component of it, as well as people, process, technology, and culture. I'm not sure if Robert addressed those from the Financial Analytics Institute, but we're very much in line. I partner with them and just kind of the philosophy for creating a culture of analytics for data-driven decision making. But I do spend a lot of time going to organizations, talking about what's happening, again, with things like RPA. There's a lot of fear. I understand that. I mean, what I see in organizations when we talk about, automating, people, senior management love it because I think they see the benefits. I think younger people in their careers, they also love it because, honestly, they don't want to do a lot of manual tasks. They don't want to spend a lot of time in spreadsheets. It's folks in the middle that are, somewhat concerned because they're not quite sure how this is going to affect their job, their responsibilities. Do they have the right skill set? I spoke to a world organization a few months ago. It was an organization that all but 2 countries belong to. And one of the things was that, they're looking at implementing an RPA program, and it was really to talk about change management and finance transformation, and really to focus when we talk about these enhancing technologies is not to fear it, but to embrace it, and is to look at it as liberating people from doing, what I would argue is, low IQ activities for very high IQ people. So kind of jump in a little bit about what RPA is, how it can impact the organization, how it fits in with the journey to transform both the Office of Finance, but specifically the FP&A function, and hopefully it'll have some good value for you all. But I encourage questions, so feel free to let those be in. I don't know if they're going to be addressed at the end or not, but that's one of my main purposes, is to address anything that may be on your mind to the extent that I can. So, when we're talking about RPA, it is kind of buzzy. People, hear it out there in the ether. It's interesting because when you talk about RPA and you talk about robots, for especially on white collar positions, professional positions, I think people have a pretty good idea when we talk about robotics in, say, a manufacturing facility. I mean, I think people have seen pictures of large machines that are doing the tasks that humans used to do, like on an automotive line. So they're very comfortable with that. When you talk about RPA, when it comes to, for lack of a better term, office work, it's funny, we've done some studies and you ask people to draw or explain what they think RPA is. And it's, if you think about your workspace, whether it's an office or a cube or a desk, they literally think about, a robot walks into their space and performs the jobs just like they would. And it's just a robot doing it rather than a human. And that's not what we're talking about at all. I mean, really, when we're talking about RPA, we're looking at tasks that are highly rules-based, highly transactional. Really, the term that we use is that anything that's mapped, I can automate. So think about all the processes in organizations that are really just following procedure, and there's not a lot of human interaction that's bringing value. That's really where we look for the opportunities. And later in the presentation, I'll kind of go through the philosophy we take when we're trying to implement RPA at an organization. But really what we're thinking about doing from a transformation perspective, from a change perspective, is to get buy-in from our people, is think about the worst hour of work you have every day. And what our goal is to take that off of your plate and free you up to do higher value activity. So I'm a big believer, and Mohammed was addressing this earlier, and other speakers have addressed it over the past week. It's a concept called the 3 C's, and it's capacity, capability, and collaboration. And the idea being that if you don't have capacity, you don't have anything, right? You can't collaborate, you can't do higher level work if you don't have the capacity to do it. So kind of the simple example I use is if it takes you 30 days to do the close, that's all you do, right? But if I hire some people, I bring in some technology, and I can take that 30-day cycle and to bring it down to 5 days, boom, I've just created 25 days worth of capacity for the organization. Then it's a question of hiring the right people with the right tools, capability. And so if I hire the right people with the right tools, then that's when I can get to that higher level and really start being a business partner, start addressing the questions of why rather than just what has happened and where did it happen. And so certainly in that universe, where RPA comes in is building capacity, right? It does, again, we'll get into a lot of the pluses that RPA has, but literally it's just trying to take that lower IQ activities off of humans' desks so humans can do what they're really, really good at, which is doing the analysis. One of the things we highlight, and we do it just live, so it's a little tricky to do it in a virtual setting. But one of the things is, if you think about the world and the amount of data that we're dealing with right now, humans are extremely good at finding trends that they're looking for. And they're absolutely terrible about finding trends they're not looking for. So that's what we want to do. We want to leverage technology to go through structured, unstructured, internal, external data, looking for these trends that would be very difficult for a human to identify. But when our technology can identify it for us, and then we move it into the realm of the human to lever, again, the analysis part of this. So discovery should be much more on an automated process, and the thought analysis should much more be on the human aspect of it. So what we'll cover, we'll talk about kind of the industry, the enterprise, solutions that are out there. Where are we? Where are we heading? Like I said, leveraging my work, but also the work with the FAI, the Financial Analytics Institute. Where are we on your analytics journey, and then kind of wrap it up. So I love this slide for a couple of reasons. One is, if you're giving a presentation to 500 people, it certainly catches everyone's eye. It's a trick that we learn in presentations. Feel free to use it for yourselves. But if you can have anything that's active, you'll get people's eyes. And I like throwing this slide in here because it's two things. It's what I was thinking about the presentation today. One is, there's a hard way to do things and there's an easy way to do things, right? So when we think about RPA, that's part of it, right? We can throw lots of humans with antiquated technology and we can solve a problem. So that's kind of the left. And what these two models are saying is solve the problem on the left of the Earth being the center of the universe. And I actually can model that. That's what this model is showing us, is that I can explain the movement of the planets with the premise that the Earth is the center of the universe. But that's highly complex. Or can you build me a model that shows me that the sun is the center of the universe? And you see, oh wait, this is a very clean, repeatable process. And that's kind of how we should look at things, right? It's a, I think it was Einstein who said is that we should be making things as simple as possible, but no simpler. And then of course, George Box also had the famous quote, which is all models are wrong, but some of them are useful. And so when we think about RPA, what we're doing is, can we kind of take that world on the left and make it look much more like the world on the right? So the industry. If we think about, the challenges that we face today, excuse me, it's interesting in the sense that, oops, excuse me, I want to leave the meeting. What's one of the biggest challenges that we want in our organizations? Consistency, right? We want the work to be done and done in a consistent manner. The challenge is when you introduce humans, we know there's going to be mistakes. And part of the challenge is those mistakes can multiply upon themselves. We may not catch them early and they end up having very large costs when we do catch them at the end of the day. So what we'd like to do is there a way in the work that we do, how can we potentially make it as consistent as possible? And then certainly the world that we live in today is very complex. It's very different than 100 years ago or 50 years ago or 10 years ago. The magnitude of change that we deal with and the velocity of change that we deal with continues to increase. I mean, again, I don't think you're going to come up with a better situation than, not that we'd want to be in it, but than the world today. All of a sudden, whether it was the financial crisis a dozen years ago, whether it's our current situation with COVID, we're operating in a very complex world. And then as we think about the complexity of our organizations, we're asking our employees to know many different tools, many different systems. That creates very long training times, and also that kind of falls back on the consistency side. So what's interesting when we think about it is that we don't really care about the tools per se from an FP&A perspective. We care about solutions, and that's one of the things that I work with a lot of folks with. It's as far as we want solutions, we don't really care about the tools. So as we're also, because of the cloud, we have so many more tools available to us. I mean, if you think about, the cloud just celebrated its 10th birthday with, I think, February of 10, Microsoft introduced Azure. We have this plethora of tools that are out there. And so the decisions on which tools to purchase has moved so much away from IT to the finance department. And what's interesting, when I work with vendors, and I work with a lot of big, small, service providers, they want to talk about their product and what it does. And I try to work with them, explain, from an FP&A perspective, from a finance perspective, I don't really care about, what we'd call the plumbing or the electrical wiring. We just want to understand how, by utilizing this tool, it will help me make a better, faster, smarter decision. And then certainly, we think about our employees. Again, we've changed so much. What we're able to do is just so different than what we could do 10, 20, 30 years ago. I always find it interesting. You could go back to an old hard copy of CFO magazine, and they would survey CFOs and say, what do you think your finance people, your FP&A people spend their time on? And it comes down to, this is 30 years ago, it comes down to, 70% of the time is spent on data acquisition, verification, and reconciliation. And what's amazing to me is today we can still take that survey, and the answer comes back very similar. So there's still this very high level of, again, what I would call low IQ activities that we're asking our high IQ people to do, and it doesn't create a lot of job satisfaction. So, we're looking at, we want to increase consistency in a complex world, and we want to keep our people engaged. So, this is just a snapshot, but, just think about all the activities that you're involved in. So whether it's from business development, analyzing data, to data entry, to reporting, right? If we look on an axis basis here of difficulty of task versus task frequency, when we think about what we can potentially RPA away, it's those activities that are highly frequent, to the extent that the difficulty is low, but that's really not what the constraint is, because even if it's got a high degree of difficulty, we can still model it. The challenge really, what the driver really is how often are you doing it? And so you may have seen, I think I threw up a picture of myself earlier in the deck. I have a couple years of experience, and I kind of remember it's kind of that, to me, the analogy is it's kind of like, do I, in Excel, do I build the macro or not build the macro, right? Because it's going to take time, effort, and money to build the macro. But if I'm doing the activity frequent enough, it would make sense regardless of the degree of difficulty, because it's just going to save me so much time. So that's really, when we start thinking about what can be automated easily, and there's certain things obviously that can't. When you start getting into planning, that's not something you could RPA away. But it's not that everything, and this is why I think it's so key, for our workforce, because you have to keep them engaged and not to fear this, is that we're not going to RPA away everything. We're just going to RPA away those things that that should be. I think there was a McKinsey study out not too long ago, and if you very broadly define finance, it came out with some number, whether it was 52 or 54% of, and I'm using air quotes, finance can be automated, but only 5% of the people can. So yeah, are there people that won't be able to make this journey? Absolutely, because we're going to talk about a different skill set that's needed. But we've seen that through, just the evolution of life, right? Like there's a reason we don't have people that take dictation anymore, right? The need for people has changed. I think what's amazing, again, it's kind of funny when you talk about RPA, but you do spend a lot of time on change management, is that the jobs are going to change. We still need people. In the USA, for example, 100 years ago, 90% of the people were involved in agriculture. Today, it's about 5%. If you'd ask people 100 years ago, what is that 95% going to do? They're going to do jobs that just don't exist. This statistic caught my eye just the other week. So I apologize, I may not get the numbers exactly right, but you'll get the feeling. So here in the United States, children typically start school, kindergarten, first grade at about 5 or 6 years old. Those kids that in the fall will be entering school at these 5 and 6 year olds, by the time they graduate college, 70% of them will be performing jobs that don't exist today. So again, yes, are things changing? Yes. Is change hard? Yes, but it's moving us to a better place. So again, we're FP&A, we're finance people. What we're really focused on is solutions. So when we start thinking about potential solutions to these problems, there are a couple of key components for us. We're thinking about sustainability, scalability. Is it fast to delivery? And is there a cost savings? And that's one of the biggest challenges. And actually, I'll kind of talk on cost savings off the bat. We are now getting more evidence, and there are some studies out there that are showing what your return on investment, your ROI on when you automate is. But it is, again, one of those difficult challenges. And I think a very fair question I had this when I was in Chicago a couple of months ago is, we've been talking about RPA for years. Why aren't we really seeing the needle move? Why hasn't there been more movement in option. And for me, it's two reasons. One is change management, right? You have a process that works today, why change it, right? So you just have that natural inertia of avoiding change. And the second is the cost savings. And part of the challenge is that, I can tell you how much it's going to cost to bring in a new system, how much it's going to cost it for you to train your people. That return component of it, I can't quantify to the penny. It's just a belief. So, we're beginning to see the data that shows where the cost savings is. And it certainly is there, and it's actually rather substantial, but that's a hurdle that we have to get over. I'm just going to kind of move right to left, so fast delivery, right? When we're looking at solutions, we want things that can be, brought into production quickly. It has little to no impact. Scalability, right? As we look at these solutions, we want to be able to ramp up or down. Again, we don't want to have a lot of large barriers to entry. And is it sustainable? Is it, we don't want things that just solve one little problem. We want things that are basically, solving large problems with very high uptimes and are very accurate. So the big question, is there a technology today that exists that encompasses, all these key pillars? Gee, what a surprise. It's going to be RPA. So robotic process automation. And so really, kind of going over the capabilities is, you think about it from a data entry perspective, it's great. You can bring in, one of the challenges is you can kind of get away from all of these silos in the sense that if you have multiple sources, again, we can write the code, and that's what we're talking about at the end of the day, code that can pull from all these different sources. So whether you've got an ELT environment or an ETL environment, whether you have a data warehouse, whether you have multiple data warehouses, whether you have multiple ERPs, whether you're kind of centralizing it with a data hub, again, we can automate that. So again, just in your minds, think about how much time is spent pulling data from multiple different sources. We heard the comment the other day, about silos. Yeah, I mean, again, we're trying to, think about the time saving and the capacity that you could build, if you didn't have humans having to pull all that. It's rules-based procedures. I mean, again, what's wonderful about RPAs, they follow the rules 100% of the times. And I always kind of joke, I mean, if you had a position you were trying to fill, and I showed you, stealing a little bit of my thunder later, but if I showed you an employee that could do 10 times the work at a fraction of the cost, made no errors, had a perfect audit trail, and caused me no human resources issues, you'd hire that candidate in a moment, and that's what we're talking about with RPA. Kind of touched on it. You're able to pull data from multiple systems. Again, we're looking at validating the information. Report generation, again, think about how it's really thinking about how much time is spent on all these activities and how much can be gained, if we basically have it running in the background and not really, our need. Even in RPA, this isn't even artificial intelligence, just in RPA, for example, I would argue that, your MD&A, if you have publicly traded companies, we're talking about the outlook for the organization, or even explaining what's going on in the organization. That first draft can be automated away as long as you have a long enough time series, because for every movement in whatever metric or SKU you're looking at, you've had verbiage that went with it. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but you can get to higher levels. But I mean, that first draft, instead of having someone go through it and say, what's the proper terminology that we use to be consistent, it all exists. So here's a way that we can meld what's happening financially with how we're reporting it in our native language and pull those two pieces together and automate them. And emailing out's another component of it. But again, just think about all the processes that, humans are doing, that there's not a lot of, in all of these, there's not a lot of value add by having a human touch it. And arguably by having a human touch it, typically all it means is you can break it. So, really, really simple. Example, we have our friendly bot at the start. It reads the email, scans through, the attachment Excel file. It's able to put the data into the ERP, and basically you're creating a situation. Does it need to be escalated? No, boom, then the process is done. If there's an issue, then it gets kicked to a human. And that's the idea, is that, take something like in data verification. If 95% of the time it's correct, that should be automated away. Whenever you have exceptions, that 5%, that's when it should get kicked to, a human. And again, just think about it. And I know I can get very passionate and excited about this, and that's how I am. But I mean, think about it. If I can take 95% of something that you're not, adding any value to whatsoever, it just frees you up to do more valuable work for the organization. So again, if we just think about the possibilities of what could be automated away, that's really the purpose here. And what I would say is, don't limit yourself to really straightforward thoughts. I mean, it's not just the frequency. It is just the frequency. Don't get thrown off by the level of difficulty, because that's our job. That's the people that can come in and build this for you. Again, it's really as simple as the title here. As long as the process can be mapped, it can be automated. If it's rules-based, no matter how complex it is, as long as it's rules-based, I can map it. So, we have all our great benefits of RPA. I'm just having a sip of water here. So you think about, we touch on, the accuracy that's involved, low barriers, low technical barriers. Actually relatively simple to introduce RPA. Compliance, again, you're creating this wonderful world of whether, and this is on the data governance side, but again, robots don't do things that we don't ask them to do. It's non-invasive. The fact that you can make this work really with almost any system. Again, we kind of touched on the consistency, the reliability, productivity, again, improved value for your employees. Again, if I showed this to you as a candidate, everyone would hire this candidate 100% of the time. Again, it's all, just a lot of benefits. I will say one of the challenges, and kind of going back to that conversation I had in Chicago about why haven't we seen a greater level of adoption, is that, and we'll touch on this a little bit deeper, is that, so this is more from personal experience, is I'll come in under the auspices of looking at an RPA project. But in order for an RPA project to work, I have to understand what your processes are. And that means documentation. And Robert might have touched on this, or another speaker may have touched on this earlier, is, kind of documentation for processes is kind of an Achilles heel for most organizations. And I see that all around the world. We don't like to do that. we assume we're going to do it later in the process. We'll do it when it's all over. But I can't automate anything that I can't understand how you do it. So what happens is, and where a lot of these projects actually die, is people quickly find out we're not talking about an RPA project, we're actually talking about a process documentation project, which is very different. But again, what we don't want to do in a project of this scale is what we kind of say in the consulting world, we don't want to do a lift and shift. I don't want to take exactly what we're doing today and do it the exact same way. We want the outcome to be the same, but it not necessarily all the steps. And that kind of comes into a concept we call decomplexing. But I mean, think about, we're moving towards autonomous cars in the world. And it's interesting, again, studies have been done, much brighter people than myself. And you ask people what an autonomous car looks like. And the vast majority, and I will certainly put myself in the category of it, is it looks like my car today, that I just sit in the back seat, or even I'm sitting in the front seat, I'm not paying any attention. But just think about it. Right off the bat, when you think about an autonomous car, you don't need a steering wheel. The steering wheel is a device that we added to a car so a human can physically manipulate the direction the vehicle is moving in. An autonomous car doesn't need that component nor the steps involved with it. It can move the wheels, literally by itself without the steering wheel. So again, why it's so important, and whether you go down an RPA project or not, why it's so important to document all your processes is because that's where you can look and find where these opportunities exist. So, we kind of I got a little bit ahead of myself, as I typically do, but this is really where we're talking about the strategy. How do you really implement, an RPA project at your company? And so again, the first thing is, you have to go in there and do the business deep dive. You have to understand the ins and outs of how your business runs. You need to partner with both IT and the business to assess what procedures are key in your automation journey. So, you have to have these really good relationships, this business partnering with both IT and the business itself to understand the processes. And again, documentation is key here. Kind of the second step when we look at the complexity, once you understand the process, it's time to see if there's a way for decomplexity. And again, that's the whole idea. Just because it takes a human 20 steps to do a process, I might be able to automate that into 5. And so that's what we're really looking for: concrete, simple processes that will permit consistent results. The third is, is quick wins. And what I think is really important about that is, I would argue that all across the board, in any kind of change. So whether it's from introducing, better communication standards. So there's an organization called IBCS, International Business Communication Standards. The way that you present your information. Typically, you don't want to make these changes because, again, change is hard on an enterprise-wide basis, right? Look for the quick wins, that what we would call low-hanging fruit. What is, a really tedious task that everyone dislikes doing, and take that off their plate. Because again, all of a sudden then you're building all this positive momentum that your people like it. And also it just has kind of a halo effect in the sense that you start building the respectability that what you're doing is right. And as you're doing things better and better, people are keen to understand how you're doing it. So again, even if you do it, on a small scale on some kind of a project, as people see the benefits of it, they're going to want to be involved. So moving on, to scale, so we've tackled the low-hanging fruit. Then you start looking at what are the more difficult, if you go back to that graph that we had earlier, not just, simple and repetitive, but repetitive and difficult, and that's when we want to really start bringing in that sustainable solution. And then again, documentation, we were kind of talking about this, and this goes through the whole organization. It's all about documentation, 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 because a culture dies without documentation. If it's just, I come in with a couple other folks, we start building out automation, but we don't document it. Well, when we get promoted away, go to new jobs, retire, people don't understand, they can't find out why we were doing it. And so it's very tough. You've instead of creating that scalability that we want, you've really created kind of a one and done. So again, is there going to be changes to the workforce? Absolutely. But you have to have the documentation to understand what you did, and because you don't want to just continue reinventing the wheel. You basically, want to show a good blueprint for how. Actually, pretty funny. Go back to the title of the slide. You want to create a really good blueprint that people can replicate on a regular basis. So a little bit of, where are we and where are we heading? Again, we talking about getting research. So Leslie Wilcox, who's a professor at the London School of Economics, has started doing research on what the actual returns have been on RPA, and relatively small sample. I would say it's probably 20, 30 companies that he's researched so far, and that return in that first year is 30 to as much as 200%. So I mean, there's a tremendous return that can be had. I can't tell you whether it's going to be 30 or 200, but we know it's going to be positive. And so it's, whereas the cost is completely observable, the benefit is a little more what I would call, belief-based, that, we're seeing it, it makes sense, but I can't tell you to the penny how much it's going to save us. But, again, as more and more research is done, I think the argument will only become stronger and stronger. So, what are we seeing when we talk about companies around the world? So, more than half the companies expect, robotic process automation to have a significant impact. I think that number will just continue to go higher and higher because this is just the trend that we're on. Again, if we think about the current situation that we're in, how much easier would all of our jobs be if more of our manual, rules-based tasks were automated away and we were just pushing a button to get that? So again, I think unfortunately crisis does push innovation and push advancement. So I do think that's going to actually be, and I'm certainly in the optimist, camp as we get, through these troubled waters and we get to a safer shore. But I think there's going to be much more of a push because we've seen the weaknesses in our systems and in our processes to build better, stronger, more automated, more robust systems going forward. I'm definitely on that second point. I'm definitely in the extreme automation camp. Before the current crisis hit, I would throw out numbers like I think in the next 5 years, everything that can be automated away will be. The crisis has only strengthened my conviction of that. I just think companies are going to be looking as much as possible of how they can get rid of these bottlenecks of manual tasks as much as possible. And again, it's really, if you think about the world that we're operating in, the younger people in their careers, they're not interested, again, in writing macros and pulling multiple spreadsheets from very diverse sources. We really want people to be moving away from the transactional to the strategic, because again, humans aren't really particularly good at transactional. We're error prone. We want people much more focused on the strategy. So as we adapt these new technologies, they're going to work their way through the system. Organizations are just going to change the way that they do activities and tasks. Once we have RPA, we can start, leveraging it to move closer to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and RPA are very different, but the more RPA you have, the more artificial intelligence AI you potentially can perform. And again, as we're moving to this world of trying to get away from just prescriptive and diagnostic analytics to really getting to predictive and prescriptive, again, we need to have that capacity freed up, as Mohammed was talking about earlier in his introduction. We have to have the capacity to be able to do these higher level activities to perform at the level that our organization wants us to perform at. So kind of to summarize the plus delta of what we're seeing with RPA, the benefits: it's reduced costs, automated of routine tasks, higher productivity, fewer errors, time for strategic activities. And then also you think about, where are some other great opportunities? It's from a regulatory perspective, from a compliance perspective, from a risk. As you build these rules in, think about if you're in a highly regulated industry, as new rules come in, instead of training everyone for what the new rules are, you're just adding it to the code. And so, again, you can probably capture, and again, these are pretty rough numbers, but you can capture 80–85% of the business that has no issue, and then just have your humans focus on that 15%. Challenges, there always are. If anyone tells you there's no challenges, they're not telling you the truth. The skill set for our employees is dramatically changing. When I was hiring, say even 10 years ago, to add people to my FP&A team, certainly pre Azure and cloud, I really wanted people with a strong accounting background and who were really good at Excel. That skill set has changed. We're looking much more, from a business partnering perspective, is, how well are you at communicating? How well can you tell a story? How well do you understand my business? So the skill set's changing. Again, Senior management loves it. People that are more junior, they love it because that's where they want to move to. There's a true, change management component in the center as people's skill sets are changing. Not everyone makes the journey. I mean, I try to be as very honest as I can. Not everybody can go from being, doing a very, what I would argue, mundane, task-based activity to, being able to think outside the box. So again, want to be honest that not everyone can make the journey, but in aggregate, that's where we're heading to. And then certainly we are still pretty immature on just the whole human machine interface. So we're continuing to work on that. So a little bit on where artificial intelligence is. It kind of picks up where our pay kind of leaves off. And so the whole idea when we start thinking about AI, and again, just looking at kind of the 4 points there, it's mimicking human thoughts. It's the ability that you're not just providing it with structured data. It can be unstructured data. So we're talking about what it can potentially see from vision. So what a camera could see, and actually language, natural language systems. And again, that's not science fiction anymore. I think it was Edward Teller who said, the science fiction of today is just the technology of tomorrow. And so we have natural language processing. So example, if you're familiar with Siri or Alexa, I mean, think about that. That's amazing, right? You're not typing any code in to get the answers to your questions. You're just talking and the system understands it. That's what we're talking about with natural language processing. And you're beginning to see it. I have a friend of mine in St. Louis actually did a demonstration for a software company where he's actually connected, I don't remember whether it was Alexa or Siri, but basically to his planning software. So he basically can sit there and say, Alexa, what's the forecast for sales of product X tomorrow? And it just speaks to him. And this was done on, he did this on himself. And he's not he's a bright guy, but he's not a technological genius. And he did this at a live presentation for users. And, it was truly impressive. So, there are things that are certainly, coming down the pike that are very exciting. Again, the idea is we can start learning about things we don't know because artificial intelligence. We can move out of that world of not even just running simulations, not running just scenarios, but actually true simulations. And again, one of the big pluses is it's both structured and unstructured. So if you think about, again, using kind of our current crisis, for example, doctor's notes, for example, observations from nurses, all that data doesn't need to be keyed in and put into forms. It can be read in the language that it's written in. So obviously we're very excited about the potential that artificial intelligence has. And again, it's not science fiction. It's not widespread by any stretch, but there are organizations today that are implementing artificial intelligence in their business process. So for the group, it's just kind of a matter here when we think about RPA. It's kind of, where are you in your journey? It's important to do an analytics assessment. A little plug for business here. If you're interested, there are actually tools out there that can kind of tell you where you are on your journey. I partner with a couple different organizations that provide this. It's a service, it's a product. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me. But just to understand where you are as far as your financial, your FP&A maturity. So if we kind of think about, where you are from a data maturity perspective, it's data understanding, process automation, predictive analytics, then getting into AI. But what's my data telling me? How can I automate the tedious tasks? That's what we're really talking about. But then you got to get to what I think is kind of more the exciting. It's like, how can my data help me understand the future? And then what can it actually tell me about the future? So one way that we look at on a maturity level, a maturity model, we go from descriptive to diagnostic to predictive to prescriptive to actually self-learning. So moving away from just the what happened and where to the why to what might happen, how do we make it happen, and what don't I even know. So I think with that I will stop because I know I'm coming up to the top of the hour. Mohammed, are there any questions that you'd like me to address?
Yes, Brian. There are a couple of questions. You want to address now?
Yes,
I
yeah,
can.
yeah.
Okay. From Venkatesh, he asked, "What are the parameters, metrics you will consider in preparing a business case for CFO to implement RPA in any organization?"
Sure. So you can go, most of it's going to be time-based, right? And so you can actually go in there and there's organizations, that are out there that saying, what are the benchmarks for time for doing processes? So you basically, what you're looking for is something that takes a long time, that has pretty low value, and being able to basically say, well, instead of it taking 2 or 3 days for us to do it, we could do, I'm using just extreme examples, is we could do it in an hour, right? And how we could free up our people to do that. So most of it is going to be time savings, at the kind of the first iteration, because you can show how you can use your people much more effectively. I mean, very broadly, again, I can address anything offline if people want to reach out to me afterwards, but I mean, for the most part, that's where your benefit's going to be, is instead of paying people to do this low value but necessary activity, we can automate it away, take those people that can be doing higher level activities and doing it that way.
Okay, and there is two more questions. I think they are more similar. I will try to combine them. So another question: RPA automates our processes completely, but it will not learn anything new until we feed into it. Can we use AI to update RPA? Another question is like, how does it ensure accuracy of processing when there is sudden change in the process and new business logic is not updated?
So to the first question, absolutely, right? That you're right. There's definitely there's limitations on what RPA can possibly do for you. I mean, you do want to remember, for RPA, it is a rules based. It's great for overcoming process and systems limitations. But it is focused on structured data, but it is deterministic in nature. Basically, you're creating a system that creates the same output given the same input. So yes, so RPA is very different than machine learning, very different from artificial intelligence. And I'm sorry, the second question that you said, Mohammed?
Yeah, second question is like, if there is, for example, there is a sudden change in the process and new business logic is updated, so how we can address it in the RPA? Should we need to change it or update it, or how?
Right. So that kind of goes back to when the earlier slide, we were talking about complexity, right? So as there's changes in the process, you don't have to go out, I mean, especially for very large organizations, go out and retrain everyone, right? It's literally just changing the code. And so that's where, again, that's where you're really getting a high ROI for your activities, because I mean, think about it again, and I'm a little bit older, but I mean, it's kind of like in macros, right? You don't have to go out and explain to everyone what change occurred. You just go in and change the code itself, which you usually can do in a much quicker time.
Okay, and there is one more question I think I can see. What are the examples of documentation that you discussed? Is process flows and including swim lane diagram part of it?
Sure. So, I mean, a couple examples of companies that I worked with, so I hope I am addressing. So I'll just go through 3 really quick ones. So you have elimination of processing. So, for PO invoices, for example, you eliminate almost 50% of that. You free up time for staff. Improve visibility. Greater scalability. For a foods company, they saw increased efficiencies, better accessibility to their documents, doing in minutes what literally truly took days, and basically more effective management of staff through real-time KPIs, who's posting invoices, average number of invoices posted per user, average time to post an invoice, and then it gives you the ability to see where additional resources are needed. And then like for a pharmaceutical company, maintain average monthly invoicing, without adding any people, right? Improved cost savings. They were saying, they were capturing 57% more of payment discounts, decreased time spent on processing invoices, and increased the number of invoices processed on time to literally 99.9% of the time. So there's huge returns that can be done when you implement.
Okay, and there's one more question. How difficult is the programming for RPA? Are there any tools that uses NLP?
No, I mean, basically you're writing the code in whichever language you're engaging the people in. So that's the beauty. There's no restriction. There's not a product per se that you have to buy. It's just having the right people and leveraging the system. Because I mean, I couldn't say without understanding the systems that we're talking about, which would be the proper way to do it. But absolutely, you're just bringing in, the right people to make the proper connections between the different sources.
Okay, and there's one more question. When it comes to AI and RPA, clean data are required to train tools to work properly. What is your advice to CFOs in terms of data quality?
So I'm a huge fan of what's now getting to be known as data hubs versus data warehouses. There's nothing wrong with a data warehouse, but that was the technology that we've had over the last 30 years. So that was all about extract, transform, and load, right? So you're never getting your data at that transactional level. There's now technology, and feel free to reach out to me offline, but there's now technology that we call is ELT, which is you're taking your data, you're loading it, and then you're only transforming what you need. And so what it permits you to do is take much more data, because obviously if you're familiar with how a data warehouse works, you're limited to how much data you can have and how quickly you can turn it around. But you now can take external, internal, structured, unstructured, put it in your data hub, and then you just pull out the pieces you want. And to me, it kind of creates that ultimate goal of, you actually have true drill down to, literally the penny of what your data is. So one of the ways to look at it, and your response time is much quicker. As we're moving forward, I would encourage people to look at that technology because I think that's really where we're going to move to. Because again, these are things we couldn't have done 2 or 3 years ago, but technology has moved to a point that we now can get these insights into the organization that we just never had before.
Okay, and there is one last question. How can we apply RPA to smaller entities? How do we use RPA for cost optimization?
Sure. No, so it's not that's the beauty of RPA. It's not restricted to size, right? Is that any process you have can be automated and as a function of the organization. I mean, I guess there's a size that you're so small doesn't make sense, but for smaller and mid-sized organizations, it's tremendous. Like if I can show you a process, again, it doesn't matter the size of your organization. If I can show you a process that's going to give you 30 to 200% ROI on your investment, you're going to do it. So I would again, it's kind of that first step in that 5-step process that I shared is what are the tasks that you think can be automated away, and do a pilot to see if it makes sense. Do you get the returns that you're expecting, and then let it build from there. So kind of the term we use is you don't want to boil the ocean. You want to find really good opportunities to automate, do it, and then let that success build upon itself.
Okay, that's all I think for now.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. Well, Rachel. Are there more slides, Brian? You need to cover?
No. Well, I'm going to just stop here.
Okay. That's fine. So if anyone has some more questions, they can even unmute themselves and speak directly. Or if you have any more, you can even post in the chat box. So I think, Brian has already covered from a very practical point of view, like how we can leverage RPA to improve our internal processes, and especially to minimize the time that accounting and finance function take to do traditional work, and then we can focus more on the business partnering activities. So it's a great tool, and I think that's all from my side as well. And I think Muhammad Al Ruby is with us.
Yes, hello everyone.
Yeah, so Muhammad he was the co-host also with me in organizing all this virtual transformation summit. So as you all know, we are just closing this summit, and we are highly thankful to Brian Kalish for his session on RPA, and very practical, insightful session. Thank you very much, Brian, for your time during this current situation as well. And just we are going to close this summit, and I will just over to Muhammad Al Ruby for his closing remarks and for his advice for the young accounting and early to mid-career finance professional who aspire to transform themselves into business partnering role. And that's all from my side. Take care, and over to you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Zishan. Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. Today is the closing of our successful virtual summit hosted by HOFT. And I'm very pleased to announce that we have reached more than 350 registrations, and we had more than 100 attendees. Thank you everyone who contributed in that successful summit. Thanks a lot to HOFT organizers, and thanks to our great speakers, Brian, Andy, Andrew, Kalia, Ashid, and Binod, and also our Ashid, and also our Meka Dubai chapter. Thank you everyone for having that successful summit. And if we have to say that that great succession happened after just our first summit, it would be a great result. We had covered very interesting topics. One of them is finance business partnering. We had 3 sessions for finance business partnering by Andrew Jepson, by Andy Shambrook, and myself. We had 3 sessions also considering the difficult situation we are having right now. One of them by Zishan, and one by Binod, and one by Ashid. And also we had one of the very interesting topics, which is storytelling by Kalia. And also we had a finance transformation comprehensive presentation done by our Dubai chapter. Thank you very much for everyone contributed to that success. And stay tuned for our next virtual summit. We are planning to have it in the summer, so it would be between June and July, so stay tuned. And we're going to have another very interesting topics as well. As an advice for everyone in finance, we have to capitalize on 2 important things. One of them definitely is technology, and the second one is our mindset. So we have to work on our mindset to be a true business partners and to capitalize on the technology, as Brian mentioned, and also by the session we had with Robert about technology. So technology will help us a lot to save our time, to work more efficient, and to free our time to give true insights and actionable insights to our business partners. So stay tuned, and see you soon in our next summit in the summer. Thank you very much, everyone, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. And I think many people are asking about the copies of presentation and recording. So yes, for sure. Or we are just after the end of this summit, we are going to compile all the presentation copies and all the recordings, and soon inshallah it will be released and published on our YouTube channel as well as on the LinkedIn, and we will send by email as well. So everything is recorded. We have all the copies of presentation from all the speakers, including Brian. Also, we will request him to share his copy of presentation. So we will share with him. So that's all from our side. Ramadan Kareem to everyone as well, and care and stay safe, and take care of your family and friends, all people around you. Especially Brian, also you take very good care of yourself.
Thank you very much, and yourself too. Be well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and good night and good evening.